Hello, everyone. Dear panelists and our live audience, I would like to welcome you to our Baku Trade Forum online and to thank the Minister of Transport, Communication and High Technologies of Azerbaijan Republic, EU for Digital and Ernst & Young Initiative, as well as to the World Net Summit organizers for all their efforts which have made this session possible. There are opportunities for the development of e-commerce in Azerbaijan, and 80% of the population are internet users. Every year, our ministry holds forums, events around this and roundtables with the European Commission, and the annual Baku e-commerce forum is a clear example of this. It was held with a view to assisting the development of trade in the country. I would like you to introduce to you our speakers. Welcome, please, Blanca Zutta. She is a technology and marketing specialist of Crypto Valley World Trade Organization and member of Crypto Valley Association. She currently works as EdTech specialist at the World Trade Organization, where she integrates technology and learning programs targeting developing countries. This is economics in the transition and World Trade Organization acceding countries. She is also a member of several associations, including the Crypto Valley Association, the International Token Standardization Association, and the Advisory Group on Advanced Technologies in Trade and Logistics, member at UNEC, UNCIFA. I would like to introduce you to our second speaker. It's, So I would like to, introduce you to our second speaker, to Walter Chairman, who is the chairman and Universal Postal Union Consultative Committee. He is also a co-chair on e-commerce Europe and e-logistics working group. And Mr. Jan Hitler, so he is the chairman of the board of Danish Chamber of Commerce in Lithuania, member of the board on HopTrans, member of the board of GS1, and advisor among other ecosystem and logistics of e-commerce. The following our speaker is Vladimir Abramichev. He is a director of Sorbonne Economics. He's an expert in digital economy. He specializes in information technologies for development, innovation, and competitiveness. And he's the author of 20+ analyticals and strategy publications for international multilateral organizations on e-government, digital innovation, electronic trade, e-commerce, and e-customs. Our following speaker is Linus Dikpetris, who is the government and public sector leader on Ernst & Young of Central, Eastern, Southeastern Europe, and Central Asia. He's working with the clients in various industries on their strategies and digital transformation agendas with focus on the government and public services sectors. The last hour speaker is AJ Rowell. He's a global banking and capital markets restructuring leader at Ernst & Young and working within financial services transaction advisory practice, advises national authorities, government agencies, and banks across Europe on the reshaping of banking system, individual banks, and the strategic repositioning of bank assets. I would like to give a floor to our first speaker, to Blanca Zutta. Please, Blanca, tell us more on opportunities that the crisis could bring to the e-commerce sector in terms of innovation. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Leila. First of all, thank you very much for the invitation. As you know, the digital economy was already important in the way we did business before COVID-19, and this trend will continue to increase. 30% of global GDP, according to UNCTAD, is due to e-commerce, and technologies such as IoT, big data, 3D printing, AI, and robotics in industrial matters make already part of our current manufacturing process and the delivery of online services. However, there are few international rules to facilitate cross-border e-commerce and to align regulations. So how did the pandemic affect e-commerce? You have seen that many social distancing measures worldwide that have increased online demand for goods and services and have caused also several challenges, such as disruption in supply chains, logistical barriers having an impact on cost, having an impact on postal services who have to shift to other modes of transport, such as maritime transport, increasing the cost, giving economical and also environmental costs.
Thank you.
Also, yes.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. And which type of measures are taken by countries and other multilateral organizations?
So, as I said before, the pandemic has revealed many gaps into the supply chains and also the scale of the digital divide, both within and across countries, and the difficulties for some countries to access or collect data. In addition, there has been changes in customer behaviors. Customers are adopting digital payments and new ways of doing things. So multilateral organizations are, in response to the COVID-19, have, for example, making available funds to support affected countries, also providing systems to facilitate electronics processes at the borders. They have also provided useful guidelines to deal with challenges at the borders and support entrepreneurs. For example, at the WTO level, where I work, there are ongoing e-commerce discussions on potential rules under multilateral work program and the joint statement initiative. And also the WTO has published a report on e-commerce and the implications for cross-border trade, and is currently running a survey on trade facilitation and COVID-19 to collect data on challenges governments and the private sector are currently facing in moving goods, and how the trade facilitation agreement can ease the situation. So you can participate to this survey. It will be open until the end of May. So at the government level, government has adopted measures in different ways, depending the regions, depending the level of their economies. So for example, they have implemented tax reductions, have simplified custom procedures and controls. They have also created funds to support SMEs and in some cases, even startups. And also lowering transaction costs on digital payments. For example, I read this morning that UK Financial Authority has set a blockchain-focused digital sandbox to accelerate innovation around the COVID-19 response.
Interesting. And do you think there is an opportunity for Libra or CBDCs to be a real option to support e-commerce?
Of course, there are many. For example, the response from entrepreneurs has been also on the blockchain side or DLT side. There are several startups who have developed solutions to tackle mental health challenges, to isolation, using blockchain-based tools. Also, the WHO and IBM have created a platform, MiPasa, to merge data analytics and privacy tools only available to financial institutions in the past and adapted to manage this COVID health context. Also, there have been some solutions relating blockchain-based social networks and crypto assets to e-commerce, allowing digital transactions in fiat, Bitcoin, Ether, and also stable coins, and facilitating also access for MSMEs to loans. And this is very important because we know how difficult it is for minorities, women, and digital entrepreneurs to access to funds, especially in this difficult situation. So to respond to your question about if there are opportunities for stable coins or CBDCs to be a real option to support e-commerce, personally, I think central bank digital currencies and stable coins have the potential to become a real option for e-commerce. The increasing need for financial support and digital payments will also accelerate the adoption of CBDCs and stable coins by consumers. For example, I read a recent SIB report stating that 10% of banks will launch a CBDC in the next 2 to 3 years. There are also more than 47 central banks exploring, testing, or launching new pilots this year. Libra recently announced that several changes that will be done in their concept, such as the launch of a Libra Euro, Libra Pound, Libra Dollar, that could be integrated into CBDCs. And that means that a Libra Euro could be replaced by a CBDC issued by an European central bank. For example, in China, salaries are already being paid by digital yuan, CBDC. in some cities. And they can be used with Alibaba and Tencent. So as knowing that 47% of online shoppers worldwide live in China, as CBDC integrated in e-commerce could be the case in China, and could potentially be the case with other stable coins and such as Libra in other countries. So it will depend, the adoption will depend how efficient, cheap in terms of transaction cost, and user-friendly CBDCs and stable coins will be adopted by consumers. So there are a lot of users already onboarded in Facebook tools. So this networking effect could also drive Libra or other stable coins into e-commerce.
Interesting. And what are the lessons actually we can draw from this crisis?
I think the first lesson is that e-commerce is here to stay. And we need more cooperation between all stakeholders, governments, private sector, and also the multilateral level to lower barriers for cross-border digital payments, to form standards and promote interoperability. Second, training of SMEs and civil society is crucial. SMEs need to know how to enter into cross-border trade. And also civil society needs to understand what is e-commerce and what are the opportunities in order to build trust with it in e-commerce. There is also a need from governments to create an enabling environment. And when I said enabling environment, I mean improving the ICT infrastructure to enable digital payments. Also, regulatory reforms are required to provide legal grounds for digital transactions and promote competition. Also, at the WTO side, new trade commitments and implementing also the trade facilitation agreement, most especially the Article 7.8 on expedited shipments will be required.
Interesting. Thank you very much for this valuable information. And what would be your key message to all this, let's say, general picture?
I think we are in very fascinating times, and for e-commerce, for digital technologies, and also for minorities and women entrepreneurs. So my key message will be, there will be no other opportunities like this for emerging technologies and e-commerce. So we have to be smart, and we should embrace this opportunity. So there is no doubt that some companies will adapt and be more resilient than others, but also some business models will change and supply chains will adapt. So the role of e-trade, entrepreneurs, and emerging technologies will be more important than ever. So it's up to us, to the multilateral organizations, governments, and entrepreneurs to show this work can be much better and smarter.
Interesting. Thank you very much, Blanca.
You're welcome.
I would like to go forward and welcome Mr. Walter Trzek and Mr. Jan Kittel, so to speak on changes in e-commerce in the European Union and impact of it after 2021. Mr. Trzek, please, would you, the questions that I would like to address to you, I think we can, yeah, we can start. Would you like actually to present your slides?
Yes, I would like to do that. Thank you very much indeed. Let me bring up my slides right on the screen. Yes, here we are. To bring that really where it should be and opening up the slideshow. Let me just open that. I hope you can all see that. There we are. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to start by introducing our agenda. We would like to focus on the past, of course, to develop where we are coming from. It is the e-commerce agenda, what's currently happening in e-commerce, the physical e-commerce predominantly. We would then like to elaborate into what's going on in logistics and what that actually means to the networks. Then, of course, the main backbone of e-commerce currently is the network of the Universal Postal Union, a special organization of the United Nations responsible for providing postal services, commercial delivery services to all people globally. 75% of all e-commerce items are within the network of the National Postal Services. Then, of course, the disruptive angle of the COVID crisis and the overall response to that. That would have been the introduction. I would like to give the word now to somebody who is very knowledgeable in what happened in the past and, of course, can draw up the future developments. Jan, please give us a clear input into the history and where we started.
Yeah, but thank you very much, and thanks for the invitation and the possibility to join this summit. As until years back, I thought actually that the tsunami only happened in the nature, but I have learned over the last 10-20 years that it also happened in most of our evolution chains and also in logistics. History and evolution of logistics have been very slow from the Second World War and up to 2010, and then compared to the last 10 years. The last 10 years, the accelerator had been really putting up in the Formula One speed, and we will come back to that a little bit later. The evolution started with the cars and trucks back in after the Second World War. Then we later on moved up in the air. We got commercial airlines who was flying and bringing us parcel, and also the post package which you see here. And then later on, we got the container vessels, which came at the end 19th and moved and made even the logistic global. Work-wise, it was a little bit more simple. We was using typewriters. The first computer screen I got back in the 80s, that was just a typewriter with a screen. And that was the first step in the direction into what Walter will talk about later, the analog and the digital world. We used normal telephone, telex and telefax. We didn't have any modern tools. Business was very much local, or at least within countries. We moved a little bit further on to the neighboring countries, and then later on we moved a little bit global. When I say that business was local, it has in fact always been global, but the products was often bought by ships, as it did back in the 100 years back, and then it was put into a warehouse, and you had a local distributor and importer who took care of the domestic distribution. Logistic was very much drive to the capital, come back home, and go again next day. So it was not like flying around in Europe or moving around. It was very much like, I call it bus driving. I take the bus from Paris to London, and I go back from the bus from London to Paris. So it was very much forward, backward. Walter, oldest, yes, I am, but what is the global oldest agreement in my world? You mentioned that a little bit, so please help us here.
Yes, of course. Thank you very much indeed. I mean, the oldest network in the world here is the postal network, for sure. The oldest global logistics agreement has been the agreement to establish the global postal network to the benefit of all citizens worldwide. That network was established 146 years ago on the global level, and I have to say, highly successful. Of course, the first step was letter communication, but that evolved over the last 10 years into the backbone of commercial item delivery, widely known as e-commerce. Those items are now representing 75% of the full e-commerce volume globally. So the UPU network, the postal network, is the global backbone. But Jan, I would like to ask you to give us the overview, moving from what you need into the global perspective here.
Yeah, but as in your world is like this, we come to the time of the analog world, if I remember what you will talk about later.
Yes.
Yes, you can say that. We started making shopping malls and bigger cities, and we started this moving in from the country to the bigger cities, and we also started the one belt, one rope. The new drawings was made for that project. It was actually the ET World who was the main initiator of that, when the production of the computers and technologies for that moved inland in China. Then Mr. Xi Jinping decided to make the railway over there. So we started getting what was beginning from the container world with the trains in Europe. We also started on the global trains into connecting Europe to Asia. We will see 5, 6, 7 train routes coming in from Asia into Europe, from Turkey in the south up over Russia in the north. And we also see that the road freight has gone more over in that across border, not only for e-commerce, but also in terms of transport. You see East European carriers taking over 80–90% of the European cross-border transport, moving trucks from Lithuania or Romania into Europe, driving around in circles in Europe and coming back to the start point. And you've seen the logistic world going into the same as the commercial world, where you find the best and most economical resources to handle your logistics. So we see the really first step of what we call the new digital world. We start getting the technology in terms of the telematics, which is also impacting a lot on the digitalization of the e-commerce and logistics. So it is getting slowly over the last 10 years and into where we are now in the footsteps of the digital world. So please, Walter, let me understand how is the analog world from that time? And could you please update us on that one?
Yes, the analog world was a world dominated, of course, on paper. Paper documents were sent accompanying commercial items. That again was a key factor in the global world. However, it also led to major disruptions and challenges. To show you some, I will skip a little bit. Oops, we have a little problem here. The main problem there was that the analog world is, of course, based on paper and has to be supplemented by digital means. And therefore, I would like to draw on what's currently happening. And you see 2 graphs here. Both of them are highly interesting. The red graph shows you the real-time volumes in the postal network. I have a screenshot here from the 4th of May this year. And the interesting thing there is, in the global postal network, the volumes are quite parallel to what we have seen a year ago. But please bear in mind that there is a de facto standstill for cross-border e-commerce in the global postal network. So you see that about in the other blue line, which is indicating that about half of the volume is actually stranded. Yeah, this is dramatic. It basically indicates that we have a standstill in the global network. This is dramatic. We have to restart that, and the only possibility to do that is to involve technology. So away from analog to digital, and further on, of course, we will show you how that will actually mean.
But Walter, sorry for interrupting, but coming back to what you showed before, the biggest interruption and disruption on that is actually that the passenger aircraft are not flying. That's why you have these boosts, and that they will not go in the air again in the same volume as earlier.
Absolutely. You see it here already, Jan. You see that all transport modes will be involved in the future. You already pointed out, of course, the highly relevant initiatives by our Chinese friends. Yeah, so we currently see a boost in e-commerce within the European Union of 30 to 35% plus, only within the first 2 months in e-commerce in Europe. But that is local or neighboring countries. The cross-border e-commerce came to a total standstill and is currently missing. And of course, there is a next disruption coming in 2021, technology-wise, switching from analog to digital. This will be mandatory in 2021 for all e-commerce globally and into Europe, and will help to balance all transport modes between air, rail, and maritime. And you are, of course, the absolute specialist here, hands-on in logistics, Jan.
But Walter, yeah, but this is the future. It's a little bit complicated. You can, of course, say that when you look into the future, we all get our financial magazine all around the world, and there is a lot of stories about that. One of them is that how many airlines will be back. I'm sitting here with a Danish financial newspaper said only 5 airlines in Europe after the crisis. So it indicates a lot what you show in this slide here, that where the cross-border e-commerce have been very much linked to passenger aircraft, they will have to look for new solutions. And I also mentioned a little bit earlier about the container and the train. So you will also see a much faster train. Xi Jinping said in 2012 that the train is one of the biggest political interest in improving relationship between countries, because if one country don't make the tracks, then the next country will not get the train and you will not get your parcels. So e-commerce and train will be some of the indicators on the political world. And as I've said here, who will be back? 10, 15, 20 is both global, continental, and local. I talk about airlines, shipping lines, global logistic companies, parcel companies. When you talk about the parcel companies, of course, Walter's old organization, UPU, will stay, but I'm not sure in which shape. I trust you might come in on that. But you will have big logistic companies like DHL, DSV, and our American friends, XPO, which is a much more digital broker system-orientated logistic companies, something which only have come into Europe here the last 10 years with Coyote and Robinson. The air, sea, and rail will be dominated again by 10, 15, 20 players. Lufthansa, they will be the British Airlines, KLM, Air France, and so on. And then you will also have some local airlines. I'm interested in being Danish, Scandinavian. Will SAS survive? Will it be, who will be there? And who will be out in Azerbaijan? Will Silkways and so on? What will be the players? Then, of course, as we will always have the local heroes. We will always have the food productions and some of that based on local clothes brands and so on. But they will have a challenge in time if they don't go digital. So who are they? Will it be Japanese Post? Deutsche Post is already the owners of some of the biggest logistic company. Will it be American, Chinese, or the Azerbaijan or Silkways? It's interesting. You also have the joker of the EGOE system, which is remote postal operations. And you have the systems. So there's a lot of things coming in, and I don't have a 100% clear picture, but it's no doubt that digitalization will form it. These logistic companies who don't grab that and make this transparency, they will have a challenge. So we will see a speed which we never have seen in my 35 years in logistics, and that will only be faster. So Walter, what about the technology on this side and the digitalization? Please help me here. Absolutely. You are the specialist.
Thank you, Jan. Thank you for all that. Yes, the good news is that the current disruption was somehow anticipated. Not, of course, the tragedy of the COVID crisis, but the Universal Postal Union and the World Customs Organization, with all our friends in all the other special organizations of the United Nations, they were prepared for switching from analog to digital. Now, of course, all people involved in electronic trade and e-commerce understand the necessity to switch to digital means and to reinvent communication on that basis. Therefore, it is absolutely timely that the decision has been taken by the governments globally, worldwide, to switch to digital means by the end of this year. So the message is, without data in advance, there will be no border crossing for any commercial items by the 1st of January 2021. And I repeat that and make that very clear to anybody listening to me right now. Without data sent prior to any kind of commercial item sent in e-commerce, you will not cross a domestic or international border again. This is
Walter,
highly important.
we have the CN23. Is that not good enough?
No, it isn't. It's analog and paper-based, and was the source of a lot of VAT and customs fraud in the past. Governments cannot afford that anymore. VAT has to be paid like we citizens pay VAT in the supermarket. Why should that be excluded in e-commerce? It shouldn't. And this will be stopped on the 1st of January 2021. So the postal model designed for that between the UPU and the World Customs Organization is complemented, as you see here on the left corner, by commercial models following suit. And I'm happy to say that the UPU harmonized and standardized that for the global e-commerce environment. So
what, and this is almost like back into the past, this with the CN. So the old guys is making the new system and setting the agenda using the old models.
Yes, we learned within the UPU that we would like to stay alive for the next 50 years at least, being one of the oldest organizations within the United Nations network. And we are proud to be spearheading this new kind of environment. Thank you very much for listening to me. This is back now to Jan. It was a privilege to join you.
Walter, come on. It's very, very nice. And I'm so pleased to see that the whole backbone of our welfare system, the taxes and the income streams from consumers is coming back to the country, that this is the whole essence of that one. And actually, that's also what we work a little bit on with this Ernst & Young together with making that report, which is a fantastic work to learn about all these necessity and the whole digitalization of the e-commerce. So thank you for listening to Walter and me on this presentation.
Thank you very much. It was indeed very insightful and interesting discussion. We're looking forward to the following, after the post-pandemic period, what is going to happen. I would like to invite now Vladimir Abramitchev to discuss the response of the European e-commerce SME to COVID-19 downturn. So how does COVID-19 impact on e-commerce, the strategies during the COVID-19 downturn, and what are the measures to sustain after COVID-19?
Thank you very much, Leila. Thank you very much for inviting me to share my experience and to summarize what I wanted to present. I hope very much that it will provide some relief and some helpful advices to SMEs from, first of all, from Azerbaijan, as the subjects we have selected with the ministry, and to show the experience of European e-commerce SMEs, how they fight currently with the COVID downturn, and as well to show some good practices and some long-term measures that will impact our work and our e-commerce in the future. So I will try to do it very, very practically, just to show some examples and some resume of conclusions. So I will show very quickly what is impact, the main trends now, how they impact the e-commerce in Europe, specifically in France, where I'm located now. As well, I will show very quickly the experience from other region where I lived a long time in Asia. So it will be very interesting as well how to use their advanced techniques. So secondly, I will present what strategy used by the SMEs right now, like in real time, how to adjust and save their businesses. And the third, it's long-term measures to sustain. So very quickly, so our COVID problem shows that, first of all, the habits of buyers change very quickly. Here, just to show that for internet users in France, in Italy, in Germany, I show how they move to buying online comparing to buying in stores. In Europe, local stores, food stores specifically, are not closed, so you can buy, and supermarkets, so you can buy a lot of things, so it's not restricted. But at the same time, quite a lot, for example, for Italy, 31% of online users, they shifted to buy more frequently on internet. In France, 16%, so in Germany, 12%. So the trend is shifting really habit to buy online through social networks, especially. Secondly, so it's a chart showing the development of e-commerce sales for fast-moving consumer goods, so like food good or something for house. So it shows you from January to end of March, for example.
You don't share your screen with us. We can't see it. You don't share it.
You don't see my screen?
No, we see you. Sorry for that. Sorry for interrupting.
Sorry for this. I try to adjust.
Here we go. Now we see the big one. You need to put it on slide mode. Yes.
Excuse me. Yes.
Yes. Sorry for interrupting.
Yes. So as I said, the first shifting habits to buy, as I showed, the buyers buy more online in European countries, and a quite dramatic progression in number of buyers. So second trend is always moving needs of customers from depending on the situation, physical situation in a country, and goods they purchase online. So here an example for Spain and Italy, for fast-moving consumer goods in the progression from January to March. So you see an dramatic increase in some categories of products. At the same time, it's not for all of products, of course, and that's why the third slide I would like to share. So, and how many e-commerce websites were impacted. So in France, for example, about 18% of websites increased their sales. So it's for some category of goods. So like grocery, computers, household educational products, gardening, toys. At the same time, so what's showed on the previous slide, for some products, demand and sales go up. At the same time, for other products like travel, apparel, furniture, beauty products, advertisement, and sharing economy services like car sharing, of course, a dramatic decrease. And you see, so e-commerce sites decreased in sales in France. 76% of sites, they lost their revenues. And for big part, more than 50%, they lost, dramatically, their sales online. So it means this third most important trend, it's SMEs must learn how to adapt constantly to the changing environment and the needs of the customers according to a particular situation. So very briefly to present the measures, how e-commerce SMEs, what they did and what they have been doing in Europe and specifically in France. They adapt, first of all, to changing environments of customers. They try to provide real customer services, like through social network, through indicating exact time for pickup, for example, services. It helped a lot for people to come and to receive their products at the step of their doors. For example, so there are some measures that government of France and Europe provided to help SMEs, like subsidies for training of people during this period. For example, very interesting measure was to increase the limit for contactless payment by cards in stores and on delivery handheld tools. And interesting as well measure is to subsidize fees for putting products on marketplaces. In some countries, so they apply this, they help local SMEs to take in charge part of their costs. So changing habits, how companies they deal different measures. So there is a huge return to buy in city centers, shops. In France, it's a big problem because with development of commercial centers outside of city centers, so city centers were dying. There are special programs in the country, but e-commerce showed that the importance of local stores, and now they are increasing their sales from physical stores. And they promote through local social networks and online marketing. As well, SMEs in France adopted very fast e-payment methods, so they integrated available solutions to their websites to provide sales online. As well, what worked very well is to show when you sell something online that part of sales will go to fight the COVID-19 measures. So it helps really very well as well to sell products. And very interesting as well for not for physical goods but for e-commerce services, high demand to localize people, not to work from home, but to go in a special co-working places which are easier to allocate spaces and have distance between workers, so to work from these spaces. So people, they purchase services of these co-working locations. So delivery and return concerns. First of all, so people are concerned, of course, because they cannot receive goods are brought online, and delays are increasing. So first of all, the French government issued a decree to extend return period for additional 1 month. So now EU legislation is 14 days. Now, so in France, it's 1 month after the end of the period of pandemic. So it's 23rd of May in France. So it will be 1 month plus 14 days. So people can return. They have to notify within the normal period, but they can return within longer period. So what works very well, it's real notification, time notification for delivery when products arrive to customers. Queuing, electronic queuing management as well. So shops, they inform people how they can, at what time can come and pick up their products if it's a physical location. Very interesting as well measure, it's supermarkets or post offices, well, mostly supermarkets, they have like automatic lockers. And well, usually they use it for their own products, but now they open to small and medium companies to use it and to provide supply goods purchased online to their customers. So people can go to supermarket and from local to get their products from local small medium companies. And very important, the real-time customer services as well. It's to help people to through customer journey online. The company really they gain clients now through these different tools. To fast move online for some physical companies, so the government provided lower taxes, subsidies on turnover. It means so subsidies on lost sales of companies. Primes to workers, so government basically pays some part of salary for workers who work during this period or have to be on remote location, and lower rental of municipality properties. So the tool which work very well at this period is very like easy tools provided by public services or by companies to start selling online. So not heavy platforms, websites that you need to develop and put, but really platforms where you can quickly go and sell. So sharing platforms for local SMEs as well as government initiatives to provide them to sell products for local shops. So it's like community-based sharing platforms for shops in center of Nice here, where they put their products and very easily people can purchase online and these platforms organize the supply. So it's something fast, but working well. Well, hackathons as well to find solutions, so through common minds. And as well, what works well at free trial periods for some online services. So these were like measures that company implement now. And the main measures to sustain, so COVID, it's just a next step in a chain of other flu diseases like SARS, MERS, which we experienced in 2004-5, 2015, COVID, and like flu, influenza. It's something will come repeatedly almost every year. So it means we need really, it's a long-term trend, and we need to adapt to these long-term changes. So first of all, the long-term measure will be zero contact environment, specifically for delivery, for payment, and everything regarding electronic commerce for companies. So they will, and as well, last mile delivery. Growth of G2B paperless services specifically for e-trade. It means that faster adoption of electronic contracts, invoicing, electronic invoicing, getting permits for e-trade, getting licenses to provide to export, for example, or to get to export some products. The next trend is localization of e-commerce. So it means that now e-commerce, as Jan and Jan told just before, so e-commerce will really shorten the local supply chain. This experience shows that it's very long time to wait until products come from China or from Vietnam. So now companies, they adapt, and the local, they will more and more buy locally. It means a supply of materials and sales of products as well, because it's much easier within changing conditions to supply locally. Center shops, revitalization, as I said before, but this will be a long-term trend as well. And long-term measures will need to be adapted for this. Localization of industrial production back to European Union. So this, in France, it showed clearly that the country must do something to deal with this situation in the future. Very big trend will and measure will need to be adapted for growing of C2C, customers to customers electronic commerce. The crisis showed as well very important trends that strong linkage between online shops and the physical presence of shops. So shops, online shops that have physical presence, so basically brands or stores, they see less decrease in their sales comparing to pure players online stores. So that's why I thought the measure long-term trend will be putting on new business models like online plus small showroom, or if it's a physical store, putting online. So this works really very well in Asia. They combated like MERS and SARS periods very well through this measure as well. Digital clustering, so it will trend will create more linkages and sharing of different platforms and APIs between small and medium enterprises. So next big trend will be really paperless world in everything concerning electronic e-commerce of SMEs. So it will be digital stores where people from computer will see like physical stores, but in a digital world in 3D. So they can visit it virtually. This works well as well and start, but it needs time to be implemented. G2B, B2G e-trade services, I just mentioned before. Paperless working environment, so it's not just collaboration, but really working environment for different environments for services. Delocalization of remote workers, so this will go faster and faster. And the next big trend is payment and fintech. So more and more payment mechanism we'll see for person-to-person payments and for C2C electronic commerce. As well, this crisis shows that when banks are closed, it's difficult to get like payments through banks. That's why electronic payment mechanism outside of banks, so bankless payment mechanism will have an important trend in the future. And contactless payment. This crisis that this must be improved, secured, and developed further. So these are basically current experience and my understanding what are trends and long-term measures that need to be implemented for electronic commerce by SMEs.
Thank you very much, Vladimir. Thank you, very insightful. Thank you very much. And I would like now to give a floor to our following speaker, to Mr. Linas Dikpetris, and we would like you to tell us more on how COVID-19 responses using digital and overview practices in the Eastern Partner and other countries. Please let us know your view on key government actions linked to digital in dealing with COVID-19, what's going on after post-COVID-19 policy implications, and what are the drivers of change creating of new ecosystems. Please feel free to share your slides. Yes.
Thank you, Leila, and hello, everyone. I hope you hear me okay.
Very good.
Yeah, very good. Hi, everyone, and very nice to participate in this conference. I think, this is another expression on how to manage through COVID. We are all doing this now remotely, and it works. So great to see that. I think human ingenuity will always win, whatever the circumstances. So indeed, I'm here to speak about what we have seen as EY on the COVID response, and I would say also and beyond, because COVID is something that of course affects us, but it's also interesting to see what outcome can we expect on the other side of it, so to say, because we already now see that COVID has influenced it to a degree where we will never get back to the normal, normal pre-COVID, let's say that. Yeah. So like my organization is running now 2 months totally remotely with no impact on the business almost. And I'm thinking, well, why can't it run remotely also when we get back to normal? So similar in other circumstances, like the colleagues have also said about it, I think we will see the new normal. So that's why I would like to talk about this. So if you actually look at some of the things we have seen in responses to COVID, and in particular on the digital side of the responses to COVID, so we have tried to put together here somewhat of a, several areas of rapid response in, first of all, I think in crisis management as well as in healthcare. And you see here a number of applications that have been deployed to deal with COVID. Some of them are new, some of them are repurposed. I think we have seen a lot of different apps and data, data-driven information applications to deal with all of this massive challenge. We of course have seen support to the remote working. So like we are now speaking on Zoom, there's other applications out there. So a lot of organizations have been rolling that out to make it possible, as well as, aligning their organizations to deal with that. Digital health platforms have been repurposed, e-learning, a lot of e-learning going on. Obviously, most of our kids are now e-learning. And same with students, as well as same within our organizations. I think, no classroom trainings anymore. and it looks to be working. We also see, of course, the challenge of the economic recovery stimulus, and here is a number of applications through hackathons and also through using the existing tax administrations or other administrations systems to actually deal with it. And again, I think all of that has been dealt, has started to be dealt with electronically, because many governments now also realize that they just cannot cope physically, manually. They cannot cope with the volume of transactions of distributing the support to the SMEs and so on and so forth. So all of this is kind of the picture that we have been seeing. And if we look, then we looked at some of the countries in the Eastern Partner countries and Western Balkans, also Central Europe generally. And I think what we are seeing here is that there is some things that are pretty common. So, things like contact centers, mobilization for COVID-19, and different kind of monitoring systems and data collection and publishing of some general common analytics is there. But then also some interesting things like Poland, Bulgaria, you can see here, have used telco operators data for patient adherence, making sure that these kind of, they are where they report they are, and tracking in a way. There was some nice examples in a number of countries of the operational kind of national e-health platform utilization, and some scenarios like e-prescription, e-referrals, lab tests. They have actually started using their systems in e-health much more widely, and that was a good push to actually further usage. And then, you also see some examples, very interestingly, in Georgia, Albania, probably others, but we have seen integration of e-prescription of medicines with the National Post Services delivery through the integration of systems. You also have seen the deployment of the mobile apps with some AI and chatbot functionality in a number of countries, including the contact tracing and proximity tracking. And interestingly, also for the innovation and fast deployment, we have seen also the fast hackathoning and some deliveries being created on the spot, and let's say the startup market responding very nicely to this challenge as well. So that is relatively universal, and I think that has been similar to a number of other countries also beyond our region here that I'm discussing. And if you look at some of the key challenges and improvements that could have been achieved, in this perspective, is that I think we see lack of integration. As usual, that's a big challenge to integrate different information sources. So I think we see that some of the information on the resources, on the demand, on the supply, demand and supply management and digital experience management have not necessarily been there in the beginning. So that integration has been lacking, let's say, and it was often a piece by piece approach, but maybe natural in the circumstances. And I think also kind of automatic tracking of the proximity and the paths of the potentially infected individuals has not necessarily worked well everywhere. It was more on kind of quick triaging that the apps were oriented. Although this is coming in slowly, I think, bit by bit. So resource availability, demand and supply matching, I think some countries have done nicely, but not many. So there's still, in my home country, Lithuania, I can see still that there's a lot of manual data collection in that area going on at the Ministry of Healthcare and the Crisis Management Center. And I think also we've seen a lot of creating newly, although something is already available on the market. So there was some duplication of efforts, cost, etc. I think that could have been avoided. And then I think most, in many cases, you see that the immediate responses, especially as driven by the government, immediate responses to the problem at hand are created, whereas the kind of next and beyond and the subsequent needs are not necessarily taken into account. And a good example has been, with the stimulus, which AJ will probably cover, but stimulus, we need to distribute, so we start putting together the systems that are cumbersome, that are not easy, that are difficult to administer, and then after some time we realize we are stuck because it's not been, we haven't thought about kind of the full implementation and subsequent need for support for many more recipients. So there are some good, as always, there are some good developments and some challenges that will need to be addressed going forward, of course. So maybe on a wider take on this, what are some of the policy implications of the COVID beyond the immediate reactions described so far? So I have a couple of slides here on kind of cross-sector. So not just applicable to one sector, but cross-sector implications, and then also a little bit more on the kind of government side, what's implied there. So I think what we are seeing is that because of COVID, clearly the virtualization of customer and citizen interactions and engagement with the customer and real-time customer engagement is going to be just kind of business as usual. Yeah, that's just becoming so widely spread, and people realized, this was obviously the trend before, but because of the urgency of the pandemic and how fast you need to react, this is clearly something that businesses and governments will need to deal with from now on, clearly, and many of them are not ready, quite frankly. Yeah? So this is something that we'll need to adjust to. Reputation and trust has become a really high valued commodity, high valued goods. You need to really think on how you come through during the crisis, but also how you will gain trust and maintain trust after it. And there's probably less digital here. It's more about positioning, about the right steps, about the engagement with the public and with the customer. Sharing of the resources, so of course ecosystemic approaches. We are discussing the supply chain today here, which is impossible without an ecosystemic approach. So obviously collaboration, alliances, asset sharing models, etc., clearly are going to help. And again, this can only be achieved digitally, clearly. Fluid workforce, and of course, again, the only way it can be fluid is by digital enablement. This is clearly something that is already the fact, and the businesses and governments will need to deal with. So the onshoring, offshoring of functions, that's already been a clear trend, but I think again, we have seen so many challenges with that, with India closing down in one day, and then how do you react to that, and what's your kind of reserve strategy, and how do you build a resilient organization there? So that will be obviously impacting the businesses, as well as the supply chain adjustments, which we have discussed here. I think kind of maybe more generally, I think probably one of the big impacts of COVID-19 will be digitalization generally, because that's the only way we can now live in this environment. And then why would it be different after it? Yeah. So I think these are some of the major impacts. And I think if you look then at the kind of government impacts, there is actually very interesting expectations for what is beyond. We do have here on the slide kind of the now and next, so what is happening right now with the public health, with the education, with the social services, etc. But on the right side of it, we have also the beyond, which is the kind of some of the expectations for how the life will be after COVID. And then you see obviously leveraging. So I have underlined here the things that are digitally and technologically related and enabled. And then this links to the things I've already mentioned, but things on the 360-degree citizen-centric services and resilience in the with the telehealth and social care models, and the kind of cognitive service delivery channels that would recognize who is the client, what they want, what is their history, and the integration with the intelligent automation. The blockchain technologies have started, pouring down on everyone from all the directions because of the need for trust. And if I move forward on things like taxation with the kind of design of the implementation of real, or let's say near-time tax remittance, electronic invoicing, online cash registering solutions, etc. So I think we are seeing a really big impact of the. I would just kind of try to conclude to say we've seen a lot of these trends already before COVID. But what COVID has achieved, somebody said, some of the clients said, I like that very much. They said basically COVID pushed our agenda 5 years forward, or our digitalization and intelligent automation agenda 5 years forward, because now what we thought we would debate for a long time, like how much is possible to do remotely, and can you engage with the clients remotely, and can you sign contracts remotely, and so on. We were debating and talking about it for years. And now in 2 months, we now know, everyone knows that all of this is possible. It's just a matter of will. And now we have all tried it, and there is just no way back. Okay, so I think it's if you look at this beyond, to me as the consultant in my capacity, but I see that we are coming up with extremely exciting times in the next few years, where everyone will be transforming hugely because there's just no way back. So I'll probably stop here with this thought.
Thank you very much. Indeed, it's very insightful to know this, how digitalization is progressing so fast, and interesting to review how drivers of change responding to the crisis, focusing on business continuity and crisis planning. Thank you very much for highlighting all of this, on how to transform to succeed on this pandemic situation. And I would like to go forward. Our following speaker, it's going to be Jay. We are just a second. Meanwhile, that he will join us, we have some questions on audience side. So I would like to address to you some questions that we received meanwhile. Just a sec. Okay, so here's a question. So which data mining or machine learning method is suggested to solve e-commerce logistic optimization problem? Maybe Walter or Mr. Jan?
Could you just repeat the question, or did you get it, Walter? Then please.
Yeah, I got the message. Machine learning is highly important, of course, because that's highly needed to onboard e-commerce vendors when it comes to all that data needed for shipments cross borders. Because we cannot expect that all the necessary information on item level is available from the first day. But of course, learning capabilities will be supplied by those providing the infrastructure. To give you an example, it is, of course, necessary to supply the famous customs HS codes when pre-lodging digital information to customs authorities. Now, small and medium-sized enterprises might not even have that information available. Therefore, it is highly important to have a clear, descriptive, automated learning engine in the background, learning fast, and also sharing risk management with the customs authorities in that respect. That's all already on the plate. And again, like the leader of Ernst & Young already said, this was in the pipeline, but of course is now being pushed forward quite forcefully. Thank you.
But Walter, one of my comment in that one, we have in our survey discussed the software package, that you have a lot of different software which is used for standard e-commerce shops, and they would have to be upgraded to all these new rules and regulations which we presently are discussing. And will they be able to do that? Will the whole industry be ready to also, like Lena said from the Ernst & Young, this 5 years earlier digitalization? So I also feel a concern in, will we as have the tools to be able to handle all that, what we now are moved forward to handle? That's my little bit takeaway from all this work we have been working lately on, also like Linus, which he presented now.
Well, I can't agree more. I can't agree more. That is one of the reasons why the European Commission in this field, together with the member states, decided 2 days ago to postpone the implementation of the e-commerce VAT package, this famous law saying without data you will be not allowed to enter the European Union. That was postponed 6 months, only 6 months. There are two major problems there. The vast amount of electronic data then shared with public authorities for cross-border purposes is on a level of 10-fold or 20-fold to today's level. So the IT systems of the public administrations are not actually ready for that, and they need time. Previously, the customs authorities or other authorities in Europe said they will need 6 to 12 months additional time. Now COVID slowed that down, that estimate. Now it's only 6 months. They understood that they have to refocus their resources to digitalization as well. So that's another effect, and the clear indication, because there was consensus already achieved in Europe on those 6 months, and not like previously indicated by some of the member states, 12 to 16 months.
Thank you very much. I would like, I think, yes, so Ejiro just joined us, and I would like to give a floor to him to talk about ways how effectively and quickly transmit stimulus packages to the recipients. So, and influence of COVID from a financial perspective. Please, Ejiro.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I guess I was going to spend probably a few minutes, and apologies for joining the conference late, just to talk through what are we seeing in relation to how governments have reacted to COVID-19, what's the nature of the support packages that they're providing, also just to set some context as to why they're being provided, what are some of the potential risks that could emerge as we start to ease lockdowns and we start to see the impact on the banking system, and in particular on individual businesses and personal customers. And lastly, what might be some of the solutions that emerge, and why might they be appropriate? So I'll just see if I can put a couple of things up.
If you would like to share your slides, please feel free. You're muted.
Hopefully they have come up now.
Yes,
so brilliant, thank you very much. So I guess the first thing is there's been a massive level of stimulus that has been put into the system, and broadly the stimulus comprises of 3 types in effect. So the first has been deferrals of tax, The second has been an immediate fiscal impact where there's been in certain countries a decision to make payments to citizens to provide grants and aid which directly incur a cost today. But by far and away, one of the largest forms of stimulus has been in the form of loan guarantees. And so what we observe is that governments naturally turned to the banking system, and they asked for the banks to extend credit, and to do so, the banks basically were provided with a certain level of guarantee in relation to the lending, and those guarantees were often tiered. For smaller or micro loans in a couple of countries are as high as 100%, but generally we've seen guarantees of between 60 to 80%. These pledge amounts actually, when you add up the combination of the deferral plus the guarantee plus the immediate impulse, are actually higher than the numbers that we've outlined here. But the point to be made was that what we observe is quite distinct tiers or groups of countries in terms of the amount that they've pledged relative to the size of their economy. And for some who have not really pledged a huge amount, and in many ways the banking system and borrowers are left to kind of look for solutions themselves. The starting position in relation to debt of the countries really is very different and makes a difference. And clearly the level of infection and transmission that they've seen in their country of COVID-19 clearly affects the length of time in particular that we are seeing lockdowns. But what we've got in terms of this picture, and I was talking with a number of senior government officials and bankers just earlier this morning, is it was described as that we're on anaesthetic at the moment. The system has been flooded with liquidity. There has been a lot of stimulus put out there, and so we can't really fully see the full impacts of this and what it means. But there has been means to protect fintechs and innovative companies. There's been measures to ensure that competition is maintained. And I think there's also been in a number of countries a desire to protect intellectual property and certain innovative businesses that might otherwise be taken over at a price that is very low, reflecting today's market conditions. So we see, lots of concern, and I guess the next slide was almost as to kind of just touch on why people are seeing such high levels of concern. So this is just one simple view in terms of how could we see a growth in bad lending across all of the countries listed here. It basically looks at what the historical maximum has been in the past, where their current NPL ratios are, and what a maximum could be under COVID-19. Again, a couple of takeaways from this. The first is that actually the picture is in aggregate universally seeing a large growth in the level of non-performing loans in every country. So no matter, there is no country that is protected in that sense, but the starting points are very different. So for example, in the US, they have an NPL ratio that was less than 1%. But that is expected to grow to something like 3%. So going to less than its old high, but still growing very, very substantially. And I think there are certain countries where there is real concern. So if I look at Italy, its current NPL ratio is elevated, but had been coming down. But there's a real expectation that it could dramatically increase and go back to its previous high, kind of reducing some of the efforts that have been made to bring it down. The same is also true of a country like Greece. So everybody will be impacted, but some will clearly feel the pain much more severely. And I guess to kind of loop into the purpose of the conference here today, I guess where we're seeing it is that we've been in a period of freeze. There's been an intention to maintain liquidity for the systems and to prevent companies from failing. For smaller, innovative, newer businesses who have raised capital recently, I think there is a question around how long they have in terms of cash burn, how long they will survive. More established businesses, their ability to maintain their balance sheets and how they will flex. And then as we go into the second phase, in terms of economic restart, I think the overriding thing that we're seeing at the moment is how on earth do we recapitalize businesses? So businesses will come out, they won't necessarily have the same strength of balance sheet and cash flow. They probably will need some level of recapitalization and restart capital, and a real view as to how insurance should play a role, how private capital markets should play a role, and a role for asset management and private equity. And then lastly, how do you resolve the overhang? Given that we're likely to see a substantial debt overhang and quite a wide dispersion of kind of the bad loan problem, I think there's questions in terms of how you actually ultimately resolve those, and solutions that were looked at in the past, things like asset protection schemes, asset management schemes and the like, will be required. This will provide some opportunities for people to fill in the gap. People will have to reinvent themselves and their business models. So within this stressed environment, I think new companies will emerge and thrive. But for established companies, they're going to have to transition from one business model to one which is quite different. And I think that will see substantial rethinking of who they serve, the cost for serving customers, and clearly a move very much so to a digitalization of businesses, and in particular interaction of customers through digital channels. I'll pause there. Thank you, Leila.
Thank you very much, AJ. Indeed, very insightful information. And I appreciate all of your presentation. Thank you very much again. We do have actually some questions, very interesting from the audience, and I would like to address them to you. And what are the implications of digital transformation on audit procedures?
So I'm sure Linus may be able to touch on this as well, but I mean, we were already investing substantially in a move towards audit procedures, and real fundamental questions being asked in terms of what does it mean to do a real-time audit. I think what we've seen in our business today is that we've had to continue to provide audit services. We've had to find ways for teams to operate. We will continue to invest in digital channels, and I think we will see much more integration with some of our clients, much more use of real-time checking and validation. But I think that it's going to be as important that auditors are sufficiently challenging and bring an appropriate level of challenge and skepticism of what management say, especially in an environment when a number of businesses are going to be stressed. Linus, you may have some other observations.
Thanks, AJ. I'll just add, I think if you think about the environment and by the way, when we talk auditors, it's not just Big Four or other private auditors. It's actually also, you think about tax authority, which audits their taxpayers. Think about a state audit institution, which does the same with all of the government sector entities. So everyone faces the same. You are facing the situation where now your clients, the auditees, they actually have increasing amounts of data, and they are transacting electronically, and they will be doing more and more of that, as we discussed during today. And then how do you cope with that? Can you audit with pencil and pen and Excel? The blockchain-based system that actually is a global supply chain integration? You can't. You have to actually adjust. You have to understand how these systems work, and you need to actually audit those systems rather than even the data that is flowing through. Yeah? And that's a real challenge. And yes, the big firms are able to invest into this. We, among the others, are doing that. I know our competitors also obviously are doing that. But everyone needs to change, and everyone has that challenge in front of them.
Interesting. Thank you very much.
But Linus, and you can actually add to what we said about the logistic world. It will be this 10, 15, 20. There will be very few who can handle all that big digitalization. It will be complicated for small or medium-sized companies to do that. With this trend which we see now, we will see a much bigger globalization and a much higher level of digitalization, which will need, as you said, Linus, and I very, very correctly, another type of resource. So we will also need to be more digital in all our brains in order to handle all this.
Yeah. To give you an insight there on the European discussions, the German tax authority shared their estimates for the global e-commerce environment, and they said currently they have customs declarations in the 10th of millions per year. Only the commercial letter post items are in the billions. And there will be single declaration on each and every one. They have to run audits because that's all the basis of VAT. Each item will be a VAT contributor to the budget of Germany from 2021 onwards. There was no system to run an audit on that. It has to be done in real time because that VAT has to be sent to the authorities on the 16th of the following month. There was no system like that. And the only way to put a cap on VAT fraud was that kind of system. Yeah, and that's the leverage we are aiming at. If you don't do that, then of course the citizens of all those countries in Europe and globally, I have to say, will be harmed immediately. Yeah, that money has to be collected. It will be the backbone of our future. And like I said, the best example is the supermarket. We are used to pay VAT in the supermarket. Why should that not be applicable to e-commerce globally? It will be, no problem. Yeah. So real-time auditing is a logic consequence and has to be mastered. And again, I'm quite sure that not the governments, but the private sector will play a very important role in that. And so a social, private, public partnership model is dearly needed in that environment as well. And of course, global e-commerce on the very physical side of that, bringing back the Universal Postal Union, is already envisaged by us being a part of the network of the United Nations family. Thank you.
And Walter, maybe a quick follow-on comment, and maybe rather I fully agree to what you are saying, and just to Jan's comment, and it's a little bit potentially a little bit of a disturbing comment to say that going forward, only the big players will have the capacity and the capital and the capability to develop these systems. And I actually agree. That's the most likely scenario. However, I think what I would like to just emphasize once more from my presentation is that I think we have already entered the world of ecosystems. And to me, I think, while that will be true, that the large systems, the global systems, the big applications will probably be developed by the larger players that are able to do that. But at the same time, I think we'll be seeing the ecosystemic play where these will interact with the smaller ones, with the startups, with the mid-level, third-level suppliers through their system integrations. And I think we are going to be, all of us are going to have a digital twin, so to say, of our organizations that will need to all interact to be able to provide that kind of information flow that is auditable, that is reputable and reliable, and that you can operate as a respected operator in this environment.
Linus, I didn't want to scare our audience. That was not the purpose of my comments. I'm sorry, and thank you very much for saving me a little bit on that issue. But I will say that proportionally, I believe that the big guys will have a bigger percentage of the global business. But of course, as I said, you have 10, 15, 20 on a global level, on a continental level, and also on a local level. But the proportions will be a little bit in the wrong direction. I'm sorry to say that.
So if I can add on these reflections, for example, as we are more and more moving also to blockchain systems, especially in the banking sector and other sectors, the question arises also what this means for the audit. Is there a further need for an auditor in a blockchain-supported transactional process? So I think it's clear that digitalization will have an impact in auditors, as it will reduce the intermediaries, because everything will be in a single entry, a single truth for all the different nodes, all the different people who are connected to this blockchain. So we will have also to rethink the audit approaches, and also even possibly the profession as a whole. So it would be absolutely crucial also for auditors to keep up in the digital change and to understand the impact and to have the technological competencies to deal with it.
So Blanca, a very good observation, and I'm just happy to report that I know for our company, but I assume the others as well, but there is already work on this, because you know, given that blockchain systems have started already some time ago, they do need auditing already. And I know that EY at least has a specialized blockchain competency with actually quite significant. I think there's like 5,000 blockchain people within EY across the globe, which basically works, you know, on these issues, because that's exactly what you're saying. It's not in the future, it's already now. There's already a number of businesses that are blockchain operating. And you know, so we have among our clients, and that's public, so I can say it, but like Microsoft's digital rights management on the Xbox is actually blockchain driven, and then done together with us, and this needs to be audited. It's like it's today. so you need to deal with that already now.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, the work of the auditors has completely changed. So they have to define digital strategies, explore experiments, also acquire sometimes startups. So I think training it will be crucial also in the transformation of this profession.
Interesting, thank you very much. And there's actually a very interesting question, Blanca, to you that the audience asked that, do you think the pandemic will increase the number of women entrepreneurs, and how will it affect?
This is the big question. A very interesting question, thank you. I think, yes, the pandemic, I would say that for women is a real challenge overall to have access to funds, especially for women entrepreneurs. There are several studies proving that as soon as you add one woman in a board of investors, the woman entrepreneur has 30% more chances to get funds. So I think definitely that digital transformation, the development of new tools to access to loans and finance more easily will certainly help minorities, and more especially women entrepreneurs, to access to finance. Mm-hmm. But this also requires training, requires also to learn women entrepreneurs what these technologies are, and also how to enter into the e-commerce cross-border.
Thank you. And there is a general question that the audience thinks that the COVID-19 was in favor of e-commerce companies, but is there any negative impact of pandemic on e-commerce companies too? So maybe
if I can jump, yes.
Yes.
Thank you much. Yes, I showed some figures, some statistics. Of course, there is a very negative impact of COVID on several sectors of e-commerce value chain. Well, so first of all, e-commerce shops are affected for several sectors. People, they buy less several products or services. So this is the most critical. So these companies, they don't have cash flow, so they reduce investments in new technologies and development of companies. They fire or reduce the use of human resources, of course. Well, logistics and delivery, the second partner of the value chain that had the biggest as well impact among other players in the e-commerce ecosystem. And other, we can see as well for everything, for supply chain value specifically as well, problem, and for example, in Europe with a lot of warehouses and specifically fulfillment centers have been closed. So that's why e-shops cannot deliver products because they store most of the goods in these fulfillment centers. Because we have to say that a big portion of e-commerce shops, they work on an operational model of drop shopping. They store products, and companies, logistics delivery companies, they deliver their products. So companies only process orders. So all members of this value chain have been negatively affected for several sectors. And even sectors like gardening, or let's say here in France, what we see for some products, for example, from plastics, there are very huge demand on like protection plastic screen for local shops. Mm-hmm. But as companies cannot order raw materials because warehouses have been closed, so they cannot receive materials, produce, and deliver to clients. So now the waiting list is for 2-3 months for this kind of products, for example.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you very much. We have the last question before closing our panel. That due to the COVID-19 pandemic, how companies can maximize their revenue by adopting e-commerce rather than traditional commerce? So, I think it's more on digitalization side that we already discussed.
Well, if I can just very short comment, how they can capitalize on a digital. I had very interesting experience in 2015 during MERS period in South Korea, where I lived for a long time. So I saw that. So it was not so important as COVID here, but people stayed at home a lot. And what was very interesting to see, so shops that were physical, even small, very small shops like or showrooms or small atelier, and they had a flow of clients. These shops who adapted quickly to sell online, they were in much better situation than shops who traded only online, because this linkage between clients, they saw that there are physical people, physical shop, helped a lot. So the very huge impact for physical retailers to move on e-commerce will be to keep the physical presence, not to jump completely on online world, but to keep some even limited presence, physical presence, in order to have a better chance to compete with bigger players or more established, more serious players.
Thank you very much. If you do have some remarks, please feel free to share. Otherwise, we got a couple of minutes to conclude our session.
I will say that if we look on the whole history of all this COVID, I have to think about the older generation who have been one of the biggest loser probably in this game, that they are not healthy to come out. And I think that the whole startup should think about these who have lost a lot. We talk about the huge impact of the COVID, but I really want to think about the older generation who almost have been scared to stay at home, who can't go on restaurants, etc. I think that the entrepreneurs should try to look into how can we do something for these. This is my personally biggest concern after the COVID. So help the losers of the game. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Jan.
If I can add something, I think so COVID, as we saw in historically, there were other diseases like this. So this will, unfortunately, will be a repeating situation. So other diseases will come. And if we compare with something different but very similar in nature, like hurricanes in the Caribbean region. Now, 15 years ago, they came every maybe 10, 15 years. on a region. So now they came almost every year. But people, they know that in August period, hurricane will come with maybe 80% of chance. So they prepare physical stores and well, online now as well, because they store products to deliver faster. So what I saw there, they are ready for this period. They are prepared and they adapt their commercial practices to the coming period. Fortunately, with COVID on other coronavirus and flu, it will be the same situation. So e-commerce must basically have a seasonal adaptation, and as well to be more automated and contactless. Maybe it's not very nice world, but to get products and to be basically feed, we need to create automated systems that can supply products, services, even without human interaction on the contact person to person. And this coronavirus crisis showed us that this is the weakest maybe point where two people need to contact in order to allow the value chain to function. Thank you.
Can I say a few words? And I apologize, I will need to leave due to another commitment. But I think, from my perspective, I would actually look at this situation from the positive side. I think we have already, experienced and discussed to death the negatives of COVID. To me, the COVID has, forgetting its negative sides, it's actually has shown how fast we can move, how fast we can adjust, how how we can actually engage all of the technologies and digital to go much further than we have traditionally been. We have been wasting so much of our energy historically with paper, with processes, with heavy procedures, with delays, with everything. And now we have all these tools, we have all these capabilities and possibilities of automation, of actually doing something interesting and challenging. Let's embrace it. I think that's really, my message from here is, let's just go with it. Let's show the way to all of the people that are seeing risks in it. I think there is so much opportunity, and why would we like to work in these monotonous, uninteresting, jobs that are there in the past? I think we can do much better than that as humanity.
Very well said.
Yeah. Thank you. If I can add on that, so also COVID has revealed several risks, such as consumer protection, data privacy, and security. So, but I think even with that, innovation will be rewarded post-pandemic. So, and this is an opportunity for digital entrepreneurs, startups, to pay attention to their consumers and take into account the how to build trust, how to connect with them when they design new solutions. So trust will be very important. And these moments remind us to check out on our fundamentals, assumptions about human behavior. So there is also an opportunity for the community, where they have also a role to play to amplify how SMEs are innovating and how they connect with them and let them know what they are needing in order to allow startups and SMEs to build solutions that fit with their needs.
Thank you very much.
If I may add to that, I don't believe so much in the community or local side of it. I actually believe that we will see a rebirth of nations and governments, because they do understand that they have a leadership role to fulfill and to guide our society into the future. So the ministries have a very strong role to play, to decide what will be the infrastructure of the future. How can we actually develop federated infrastructures globally so that we all can play on a level playing field together? I can only talk to my organization, to the Universal Postal Union, in that we are actually undergoing right now also a retransformation process, where we understand that the membership structure are the nations globally, but to put the burden on the universal service only on one company in each member state might be not enough. transport and logistics is a highly diversified field of many, many partners. We need them all to be one community, and of course, under the leadership of those people we elected. And that kind of trust might be very much reestablished, not only because they are politicians, no, they need to lead. And I think that all our citizens will demand that as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. AJ, would you like to add something?
I think I'd echo what many of the contributors have said, which is it's very easy to see the negative at the moment, and very easy to kind of build a pessimistic picture. It's undoubtedly going to be challenging, but with challenge, there's going to be huge levels of opportunity. And those opportunities are going to come for the way in which societies reinvent themselves, for the way businesses reinvent themselves, and for the way in which, you know, we as individual citizens kind of go forward. So I think, as was touched on before, that in many ways we're now being asked to envisage a new and different type of world, where some of the previous assumptions that we had no longer really exist. And so how each person takes it, how each business reacts to that will define what happens next. But I think in terms of an entrepreneurial opportunity, we've always found that in times of stress is when you see some of the highest levels of innovation and new businesses being formed, because the risk to new business creation is less. There isn't the same downside calculation that people are making. And so I think we'll see the flourishing of a whole range of new businesses as a consequence of this.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all of you for your opinions, remarks, and insightful presentations. I would like just to add a couple of sentences on behalf of what's going on in Azerbaijan during this pandemics, and there is an appropriate environment for the development of e-commerce in Azerbaijan as well. So because of the coronavirus situation, the issue of domestic e-commerce becomes extraordinarily relevant. As a result of the development of e-commerce, it will increase also cashless payments, which one of the main goals of the state program for the expansion of digital payments in the Republic of Azerbaijan for 2018 and 20. And starting from 2018, we hold this forum every year. I would like to encourage everyone next time to visit the third Baku Trade Forum in Azerbaijan, and that will take part by the end of the year. Hopefully that the pandemic will allow us. And I'm looking forward to meeting in person in Azerbaijan next time. Thank you very much for your time, for your presentations. It was very fruitful and interesting.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay safe. Stay safe. Bye-bye.
Sharing experience. Thank you.
Bye.